The day I overslept saved my life. I was in third grade. One day, my mom woke me up in a rush. She had slept in, and since I went to school in the morning, this meant there was no way I could be ready for school in time to catch the school bus. School started at 8 a.m., and the bus pickup time was 7 a.m., but it was already around 6:40 or so. I was still in my pajamas and hadn't had breakfast yet. So, my mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to move on, and she would take me to school, giving me plenty of time to get ready. So, I'm sitting at the dining table eating breakfast still in my pajamas, and it's about 6:50. I hear the bus arrive about 10 minutes earlier than usual. My mom sticks her head out the door into the foggy morning and signals the bus to move on. She closes the door and goes back inside, but the bus doesn't leave. There's a knock on the door, and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains that he's the substitute driver because the regular driver called in sick. He says he knows he's a few minutes early because he wanted to start the route earlier since he didn't know it well. My mom explains to him that she's going to take me to school because we woke up late. He becomes visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's ahead of schedule. My mom insists no, that I wouldn't be ready in a few minutes, and asks him to move on. He seemed angry about it and yelled at my mom for a few moments, saying she didn't trust him and that I should wake up on time, but eventually turned away, went back to the bus, and left. My mom found this odd but just assumed the guy had never been a bus driver before. I went back to eating my breakfast and still hadn't put on my school clothes at that point, but at exactly 7 a.m., another bus arrived at my house. My mom found this very strange and went outside to talk to them. She came back inside looking terrified but didn't say much about it and told me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what had happened, but my mom ended up telling me a few years later when she spoke to the driver of the second bus.
Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more. Before I return to eating my breakfast and still don't have my school clothes on at this point. But at 7 a.m. sharp another bus pulls up to my house. Mom thinks this is really weird and goes outside to talk to them. She comes back inside looking terrified but doesn't really say anything about it and tells me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what happened but Mom ended up telling me a few years later. When she went to the second bus, she found that it was being driven by my regular bus driver and it was full of all the other kids that are usually on the route. The other bus was empty. Mom asked the driver about the substitute driver and about him calling in sick. I never called in sick. There is no substitute driver on my route, he says. The driver immediately called dispatch in a panic and told my mom to go inside and call the police and report this incident. There was absolutely no one doing my driver's route that day. Whoever this was most likely a kidnapper who had targeted me. I never heard anything about it again, not even if someone else had ended up being picked up by this mysterious fake bus driver. But chances are, had I gotten on that bus, I would have never made it to school or back home. And if Mom hadn't overslept on that specific day, I would have been on that bus.
Now you can watch the third part by pressing share and more.